So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start putting the stuff together. So we've already kind of talked about, the last week was kind of getting, or 2 weeks ago was getting the basics, learning extrudes, the different options there, stuff like that. This week was, or last week was kind of starting to put it together a little bit and seeing, okay, in this situation I can use this is how I can center things, do that, and kind of get into a few more commands. Now we're going to start putting them to use. Okay? So in this discussion here, there's this exercise set up as a discussion so that way you guys can go back and forth, because not everyone's going to have the same idea of how things can be done. So right now we're going to be using this to plan what we're going to do. We're not going to do any actually modeling in this discussion. This is all a thought experiment. Okay? Because if you just jump into a model, you look at it real quick, you start jumping in and trying to start model it, sometimes you'll be okay. Sometimes you'll get halfway through and realize, oh, I should have done it this way. And then you have to undo everything and restart. That's the better thing. A lot of people will try and fix what they've already started doing to be what they want, and that can take way longer than just closing it, starting a new one, and starting from scratch. Because I've already spent 10 minutes, I need to keep going. I've already invested this time. They don't want to give it up. Sometimes it's easier just not to keep trying on it, just to give, like, all right, there's a better way, let me just stop and start something new. So don't ever be afraid to just say, screw it, I want to do something different, okay? But the first step in that is coming up with a plan of what you want to do. The better your plan and the more detailed it is, the easier it is to actually do the model. Because if you already know I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do this thing and this is what I'm going to draw, this is how I'm going to dimension it, when it gets down to modeling it, you just follow your steps, right? It's easier when you follow your steps and trying to figure something out as you go. And so some people will think, oh, I'm just going to do my steps. I'm going to do this thing and then this thing and this thing. But then they don't talk about, okay, how am I going to do this thing? What commands am I going to use? So that's what we're going to do in this one. So I have this part here for you. And so I've gone through and I've made my list of steps of what I'm going to do. So first I'm going to change my units to metric, because this part is obviously metric, right? Then I'm going to sketch on the top plane. I'm going to sketch the slot and then change it to a D. Oops. How am I going to do that?
Slot, cut it.
So when I do the slot command,
Oh, you delete lines.
I don't know. Do I want to delete lines?
After you've made it.
So if I do
can
this
trim
here, and I delete lines,
You can trim them.
now look at it. It's not behaving right anymore, right?
It's going wobbly.
So to make it a D, I'm just going to draw a line there, and then let's turn that into construction. So now I've got a D shape, right?
Okay.
Easier. I don't have to, because I delete those edges of those pre-made shapes, it loses that shape. I just need to add in one extra line and change one that's already there to construction. Could I leave this as a regular line and then just be able to pick that versus that? Yeah. But I like to have just one closed shape. That's always the best thing, is if you can have one closed shape, that's better than having two or more closed shapes.
Instead of making a construction line, you just delete that.
I just say, if I delete that, now look at it,
Oh, okay.
right? If I leave that, now it stays here.
If you trim it off, would you do the same thing?
Yeah. Delete, trim it, just like deleting it. So yeah, I could do that and I could make this one horizontal, but it's easier just to turn on construction. That's faster than deleting and adding new constraints. Because I could, yes, delete this, and then go in here, make that one vertical, and, oh, now I need to make that one on that point, so now I need to make it coincident to there. And still look, oh, it's still getting angular. It's easier, just make a construction. That way it still ties it all in, it still moves the way I want it to move and everything, okay? See how that kind of goes? All right, so sketch a slot, change it to a D, dimension the flat side to be 70, and the other side to be that. Or I guess I could have just put in the radius here. So maybe I should probably do that, huh?
Oh, you meant the round side.
There, and our radius 60. See, sometimes as you go through, you're like, oh, I should have done this instead. Because the first time I looked at it, I didn't see this one. I just saw this. I was like, all right, I need to do 2 times that plus that. And then I just changed. Then I saw that. Oh, yeah. But I didn't know I was going to solve it. But then I saw that it just had the 60. It's like, oh, okay, then I just need to put in, use that same dimension, but just do it 2 times. But no, wait a minute. I can just dimension the 60. That's even easier, right? So even just looking at it a few times, you can be like, oh, I can make it easier like this. And then extrude up 25 is a new component. That gives me up to here. It's a new component. Now it's there. And then I need to draw this piece here. So since the dimension for it comes from the bottom, I'm going to sketch on the bottom. So sketch on the bottom, sketch a rectangle, make it center to the side, and extrude up my 40 to make it go all the way through, right?
At the bottom or the back?
What?
You said sketch on the bottom. Oh,
yeah, sketch on the bottom. So I sketch it all the way down here, and I extrude up 40. So kind of figuring out how it's going to go, right? And here's where we look at our parts, and we try and come up with what's called design intent. How is it intended to be? So even though here it has the dimension from the side, from the side to it, but if you look at it, you can say kind of, yeah, this is supposed to be centered, right? Can you see that? It's supposed to be centered on the part. Same thing, this hole, that 42.5 is half of 85. So it's more likely that they actually want it centered, right? So that when we create our sketches and our constraints, we want it to go with that intent, that design intent of this thing needs to be centered, not it needs to be 17.5 from the side, right? Since they gave us both, I'm guessing they care more about this dimension than this one. But I could do it just 17.5 from the side and leave out the 85, right? Again, that's, if it was your own part, you would know which of those dimensions to use. On this one, I'd make it centered and pick one of the two. And I'd pick the 85. If you did it and picked the 17.5 because you thought that was more important, fine. But as long as you don't do both those, and then it's not centered. I'd rather it be centered and using either one of those, okay? Does that make sense? So extrude that up, create a sketch on the topmost face, create a point that's concentric with the large radius here, the radius 60, and then do a counterbore to give me both this hole and that hole at the same time. Okay. Even though it's not technically counterbore, it can be used for both.
If we were to have done the hole on that first level and then added that square on the backside, would the whole counterbore it out?
Oh, you mean if you did this counterbore first and then this piece?
Yes.
If you drew it on the top, it would come up and it would be a rectangle. If you sketched it on this top face and screwed up, then you'd probably have the cut, but then you'd have to do the math for the 40 there. Okay. So I do the counterbore, and then I create a sketch on the top, create a line from the midpoint out, dimension to be my 20, put in the hole. Create a sketch on this face, draw a line from here straight out, dimension that line to be 50, put in my hole. That's the last steps. Okay? So that's the steps I would take to make this thing. Any questions on that?
When you add, we always want to join, right?
Yeah, so we're extruding cuts and extrude joins. Yeah, I didn't put those just because we know that if we're gonna add to it, so like this one, it needs to be a join. But yeah, I could say extrude join up, and then the holes are gonna be cuts anyway, automatically. They can't be joints. But yeah, so you could put that in if you want.
So,
Okay, does that make sense?
So if we put 17 and a half on one side, yeah.
And if you make it centered first,
Oh,
and you
okay.
do this one, then it's
Oh.
automatically 17 and a half on the other side too.
Okay.
And it's also going to be 85
Okay.
in between. So, but I want you to use one or, well, either of the dimensions, okay?
Okay.
So, this was my example. This is not what you're doing. I've just like on the other one, I've posted some pictures here, and these are all real parts that I've stolen from Facebook. So, and they usually had some question stuff. So, this one here, it's giving you some dimensions. So, it's giving you this inside diameter here. This is 502. Don't worry about the tolerances. From here to here's that. It gives you this angle, and it gives you the height from here to here. But it's in parentheses. So, what does parentheses mean on a dimension?
Reference.
Reference. That means it's just for your information. That's not the one they care about. They care about the angle. They care about the diameter of this, the diameter of this, and that angle. Those are the dimensions they care about. So those are probably the ones you should use on your sketch, right? Or when you're making it. So which is the, we kind of talked about cones today, right? So this is a cone. Which is the best way for you to make this kind of inverted cone here? Don't tell me no. Yeah, quick, ask a question.
No, I wasn't gonna give you the answer.
Yeah, don't give me an answer. I want, because you're gonna reply to this and give me your steps. Right? Here's another piece. So it's a little flat piece down here. This part right here is the 2 1/4 by 1.5 inches. It's got these holes in it. Then it's got a piece right here that sticks up 2 9/16 from the bottom and has that hole in there. What kind of a hole is this? It's a thread.
Threaded.
It's a 3/8 16 thread. Right here. Tap tells you it's a thread. And then the 2 circles. That lets us know it's a thread. Here's one that is not fully dimensioned, but this is what the side profile looks like. And then looking at it from the end, they want from this surface to the top of this to be 2.1. They want each of these little pieces to be 0.11 thick, and they want it to be 0.718 between the 2 things. For other things that aren't dimensioned there, make it appropriate, like guesstimate. Okay? Sometimes this is how you get stuff, and like, all right, if this is 2 from here to here, kind of figure out, all right, what angle is that? Is that 90? No, because 90 would be more over here, so maybe that's like 60, right? Draw it in, do some adjustments. Are you gonna need to sketch the circle, or can you draw it square and add the fillet later? So do you need to sketch the circle, or can you add it as a fillet? Who thinks you can add it as a fillet?
I do
Well,
the fillet first.
Is the product intended to have a hole through it at the end? Because if so, then I would sketch the circle.
No,
So-
the fillet has a point in the center.
I'd use the hole command on that.
You could, yeah.
No, but not for the hole, for this outer, the top radius.
I'd fillet that and then use that fillet to make the hole.
Yeah, exactly.
So look at the dimensions. Right here, this 2.1. What's that giving us to?
Right.
It's giving us to
The
the
very
top
top.
of this thing right here.
Yeah.
That's your tip. That's
So
your
there's a
hint.
circle.
Here's another one that's all round except for slot. Someone decided to make their own slotted screw. And then here's a piece. Don't worry about all the stuff in these boxes. Okay? We'll talk about that later. Worry about these holes here and the overall size of it, okay? And for the depth of it, just make something up. Like, you don't even have a view to estimate on, just kind of make a good guess. If this counterbore is 26 deep, that means the part has to be thicker than 26, right? Otherwise, it would just be a hole. There would be no counterbore. So the part has to be at least 27 deep, I guess. Say that. Here's a little piece here. So, and then here's some pieces from the Revolve lab. So that should give you a hint on what command you should probably use for this. Okay. So any questions? And again, these are ones that I stole from people on Facebook too. These are real world kind of things. So any questions on them? So yeah. No, all of them. So for all of them, go through. So this is going to be like probably the rest of the day. So don't try and rush through it real quick.
How are you supposed to, so we had to take a step.
So you need to give me the steps of what you would do to create them. So just like I did, I listed all my steps. I want you to do that for each one of these things. Okay? And then as you get done, kind of look what other people did. If they did the same as you, great. If they did different, and you, yeah, it makes sense the way they did it, all right. But if you have a question of like, oh, why'd you do this versus that, or it's not clear, like, what do you mean? Like, can you explain this stuff? Okay?
Do you want us to submit a snip of the diagram that you're telling us to make?
No,
Just
no,
like-
you're not model. Do not model these.
Okay.
So do not actually model them.
Okay.
Just do it there. But if you need to, like, if it doesn't make sense on what you're trying to explain, do a hand sketch, take a picture of it, or open up like Paint. You know, Paint and do a little sketch of like that or something. Or you could do like a screenshot of, you know, a screenshot of this to tell me like, well, I'm going to do first this right here, you know, whatever. So if adding pictures will help you explain what you're doing, do that. Like or you know, you can use different colors for different steps. You can be like, oh, I'm going to do that sketch there, and then I'm going to do the sketch here, and have them different colors, if you want. So I could have done that up here. That I would have done, you know. Yeah, so my first sketch was going to be that. Then I'm going to go up. And then my second sketch is going to be back there. And I can say the first sketch is blue, the second sketch is green, blah, 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 blah. Right? So you can do that. And then I can, you know, whatever. So whatever you need to do to explain what you're doing. Does it make sense? So kind of go through, create your steps. The next discussion I want to make is going to